Disaster preparedness refers to measures taken to prepare for and reduce the effects of disasters. That is, to predict and, where possible, prevent disasters, mitigate their impact on vulnerable populations, and respond to and effectively cope with their consequences. It should be a continuous and integrated process resulting from a wide range of risk reduction activities and resources.
If a disaster were to strike right now, would you know what to do? Where to go? Who to contact? How prepared are you? We went into the field to find out.
Two brief parts to this question. Just wondering, at home, do you have any items that would be good in an emergency survival kit, like canned food or torches or blankets? And then also, can you or your friends do CPR?
Yeah, at home I have a pretty big medical kit as well as some canned food. Also, I'm trained in CPR and most of my friends can do it.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
After conducting our interviews and further research, it became obvious to us that often people aren't aware that they hold the capacities that would allow them to be more prepared. For example, knowing CPR. CPR is one of the most valuable life-saving skills as it doubles or triples a person's chances of survival. This is an advantage in disaster situations where the probability of people requiring resuscitation is higher and emergency service response times would likely be slower due to being inundated. It also became apparent that people that can access resources often aren't aware that being prepared for disasters wouldn't take a lot of time or lifestyle changes. With many people having items already in their house to make an emergency hazard kit, such as torches, canned food and water, it is worthwhile for individuals to plan ahead and make one of these boxes. Being prepared is related to the awareness of disasters and familiarity of who and where to seek help from. From our hunt, we discovered both informal and formal methods of communicating this. However, it could be disputed that this knowledge is not being distributed successfully to society's most vulnerable. Civil defence personnel suggest using their online interactive hazard map to plan evacuation routes. This example is problematic as it assumes that people can gain access to the internet, although we already know many marginalised people like the elderly and the homeless may have problems doing this.
Just as a side note about the dissemination of information surrounding hazard preparedness, the museum is great for reaching a large amount of demographics. Furthermore, the information produced is not so heavily governed and moderated. It can be hard science. This is juxtaposed to Get Through campaigns and also TVM productions, which we considered as a location, because these are heavily governed and moderated and also under a lot of scrutiny from government organisations and the public.
Furthermore, there are disparities in the presence of evacuation signs between coastal settings around Auckland. We found signs in both Orewa and Devonport scattered along the main coastal drag of these popular coastal destinations. However, this wasn't the case in many other beaches and bays nearby or even anything around the Auckland Harbour area. This is likely a governance issue rather than a cultural or wealth factor.
In addition, civil defence emergency cabinets like these can be found in a range of institutions. However, the lock and their tamper seal made us question who has access to them and thus who would be excluded from using their resources. Also, considering organisations are meant to be institutionalising their risk reduction, we were surprised to see how expensive these cabinets were.
The Civil Defence Emergency Management Act 2002 caused the concept of the 4 Rs to become popular knowledge: reduction, readiness, response and recovery. This became Get Through, an information tool in regards to disaster preparedness. When researching Get Through, we automatically visited their website, however we had to find an item. We thought we could find a leaflet easily, however we couldn't. Granted, New Zealand is becoming paperless, the lack of leaflets could be attributed to the government being aware that more attention could cause unneeded panic and stress. Creating a narrative of an unsafe city may be destructive for tourism and other industries. Furthermore, this lack of access to information could once again exclude the most vulnerable. There appears to be a level of disengagement with hazard preparedness in New Zealand, after many warnings with no emergency to follow that it now triggers no response. Another factor is likely no big disaster has occurred in Auckland in recent times, so it leads to a "it won't happen here" ideology. Going forward, institutions should take a holistic approach that incorporates factors such as awareness, perception and attitude.
By not distributing information of disaster risk, the government is neglecting and abdicating an aspect of their role. Surely it is unfair to burden individuals, especially the marginalised, who are vulnerable as a consequence of their so-called position in society, to seek this information themselves.
New Zealand is particularly interesting in relation to disasters. Much of the country is high risk to natural hazards and has had many warnings of potential threats. Surprisingly, these warnings are rarely taken seriously by society as a whole. For example, power fishermen and surfers were reported to be re-entering the water in 2010 despite tsunami warnings.
In conclusion, being prepared is vital as it helps to save lives, minimises dangers, establishes a certain level of security, and reduces uncertainty. However, the process of disaster preparedness is complex. This is because it involves a range of stakeholders that have differing levels of capacities, autonomy, and resources. It also requires thought of varying spatial and temporal scales. Government agencies and individuals have to consider many different scenarios and the most efficient ways of coping with them.
No one
is more capable
And planning for your situation
than you.